Sorry.
Welcome back to Restless. We're keeping that in there, Matt. Anyway, you've joined us on this episode of Restless, with Matt and Diane and myself, Father Joseph, as we crazily seek the face of Christ in today's mixed-up world. And, it was John Paul II quoting from Dostoevsky. Did I say that right? Dostoevsky?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, close enough.
Man.
And the famous quote was, "Beauty will save the world." Beauty will save. Have you ever heard that quote before?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, John Paul II, quoting from Dostoevsky.
Okay.
So John Paul II actually wrote an entire letter to artists. I don't know if you're aware of that.
Yes, I did. Christopher West released it.
How did he release
Didn't
it?
he? I have a book I have a book called God is Beauty.
Okay.
From Theology of the Body Press that I bought about a year and a half ago and it cracked.
Like most of the books on your bookshelf.
Yeah, that's right. And it was a series of, it's 6 chapters, so it's not like a single letter. But I think it was a retreat he gave for artists is what it was.
Wow.
Yeah, he must have gotten a transcript or something. He can correct us if he wants to.
Please give us a shout out, Christopher West.
No, I was talking about John Paul II.
Oh, please give us a shout out, John Paul II, to the Lord. Oh, yeah, anyway.
Yeah.
But John Paul II, of course, was an artist himself.
Yes.
He was an actor. He was a poet. Have you ever read any of his poetry?
No.
It's beautiful. There's a great book called Roman Triptych, where he has 3 just really rich poems. So much. The man has such an interior life that had to be expressed. And in today's world, we do a lot that's very functional. So, but I really do believe that it's important for young adults and just all Christians in general to stay in touch with some sort of creativity. And that's our topic today is like creativity. How do you foster creativity in your life currently? With all of our other demands on our time. But I think this is something that is worth making time for. And Diane was sharing, when I brought up this topic, Diane's like, I'm not creative. We dug a little deeper and we found she actually had a couple of creative talents that she does use. So
that is true. Yeah. I mean, I'll preface this. My parents met at an accounting firm. Me and my siblings are all CPAs. So, we weren't, my dad
not
loves
artsy
sports.
fartsy.
No, we didn't go to like museums as a child. We didn't read poetry. Although I did actually have to memorize poems and present them in 6th grade. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was torturous.
Okay.
Picked the wrong poem, apparently.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not like opposed to opening up poetry now that I'm older, but it was definitely not, I'm just not like an artsy person. I think art was the class that I had the worst grade in.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it was just, I'm not good at drawing. I'm not good at painting.
Music?
I did play the violin actually through high school. So that was,
it's funny because that's the most mathematical of the arts.
It's true.
Music,
and it's almost akin to like learning foreign languages, which I love to do actually as well. So,
that's fun.
I mean, I did enough in that class to, get through my quartet or something, nothing more.
So,
but now.
But now you have a couple really cool hobbies that are both very creative.
I do love to bake.
Sure.
Yeah. So I consider that creative, right?
Absolutely.
I look up a lot of different recipes, all substitute ingredients. I live sort of a healthy lifestyle, cut out a lot of sugar. So, just testing. My parents won't necessarily eat what I bake, but
really,
I think
What's some of the weirder stuff that's come out?
I mean, you can substitute, like Greek yogurt, applesauce, things like that for oils and everything, and. But Christmas time cookies, every year I try to add something different, and I love to decorate them, make them look bakery-esque and professional.
Right.
Nice,
so,
nice,
I would say that that's one area.
Oh, yeah. It's an art.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I
it
have
is
no
art.
doubt it's an art.
Because I can't do it.
Yeah.
for
And
sure.
just to be able to, like, substitute things and, kind of play with ingredients and things like that. So, and I like to try different recipes, whatever I can find. Just kind of on the internet, it gives me an idea. It's like, oh, well, let me tweak it for this, and...
Yeah, sure. There was another one, too, that you said that was pretty cool.
Yeah. So I bought a camera probably 5 years ago or so, and I've never taken a class or anything like that, so definitely not a professional, but I love going, especially in the spring, like taking photos of all the flowers, sunsets. I've done photo shoots for some of my friends who've been, like engagements, baby, pregnancy photos. For my nieces, honestly, first birthday and things like that. So I love taking photos and looking back on them.
That's cool. That's really
Create
cool.
such great memories.
That's super
and beauty.
creative.
That is super
I guess,
creative.
yeah.
Super creative.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I play music. You know that.
Yeah.
So, do you.
How many instruments do you play, though? You play?
I play. So I sing. I play piano. I can play guitar.
Okay.
I mean, I taught myself guitar. But I'm not like a guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
You know. I took drums in college for 1 semester, and learned pretty much just one beat. So I don't really play drums.
Yeah.
And then I can play like those toy, instruments and stuff like that.
Oh, good. Yeah,
Yes.
that's important.
Yes,
That's
it
important.
is. It is. So I guess that's what, 3?
Yeah.
Right, singing, piano, guitar.
But not only playing, you write music.
Yeah, I write music.
Are
as
you
well.
Are you still doing that? I mean, do you have time for it? Do you have creativity
I
for it?
I do write music. I write music less than I used to. It's funny. It's I mean, so I hope I'm not jumping the gun here, but the creativity that was songwriting for me, right? Like that creative habit. When I started studying theology, it almost felt like I went through a detox. Because I had been trained to write music for commercial purposes. So it would be a radio hit. And I think that they taught me a lot. So this isn't a dig on Belmont. But I do think that I got into a habit of trying to get a hit instead of trying to get a song.
I'm curious, what sort of techniques do you do?
Right, so
to
there's
get
like
a hit?
yeah, so there's like matching syllables, there's symmetry between words, so like people like to hear the words up in one line followed by the word down in the next line. There's like a rule of thumb, which is you write a song the way you would paint a fence. So like you put all the details in the top, namely the verse, right, and then it trickles down into the chorus. It's more general. That way, even though it's general in the chorus, you can actually feel like you can relate to it. It's actually still kind of specific.
Yeah, that's Taylor Swift in every.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's always about a boy that she broke up with, but every millions of women are. It's all about me.
Right, and that's the thing. I mean, I was a pop writer too, So like, although I had to write one song for that Yodel kid. You remember him? Walmart Yodel kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote a song and pitched it to him and his crew
Did he
for a
choose
class. He did not, but that's because I don't know how to yodel. It was terrible.
That's fair.
It was a terrible
That's
song. But so, I went through a detox where like when I started that master's program at Franciscan, I think I only listened to instrumental music for like 4 or 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah, like I
That's
just
a detox, yeah.
cut it. But now where it's taken me is a couple years ago I did Exodus 40, and one of the requirements is you have to only listen to music that lifts your soul to God. So I went from a guy who like never listened to any Christian music to only listening to Christian music for Lent. Fell in love with it. And like
Did
that's
you really?
Oh yeah. I love it.
I have strong feelings about Christian music.
I would love to talk about it.
Well, that's what we're here for.
I know. Right. And so I started not necessarily writing like straight up CCM music, but got
That's
involved.
Christian contemporary music for those who don't know what that stands for.
But got involved with the Sacred Heart Guild in this diocese, and so have played with some of the CFRs at those nights and played at Catholic Underground in New York City, and did some like harp and bowl style, which is it's awesome. It's like it's almost like speak what comes to your heart, although usually it's the person who's the leader, So I wasn't necessarily doing it, but that's really the creative outlet now. If I'm writing music, it's usually within that context, and if I do write outside of that context, it's just not nearly as often.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. That's cool.
Yeah,
That's cool.
I know you asked for my biography, so
that was it. Yeah, go find Matt Sparaza on YouTube. He actually does have a couple songs.
Yeah, I do have a couple
songs.
Well,
how did you fuel this creative? I mean, you went to school for it, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
How did you sort of build that creativity, or do you think you were born with it?
I mean, I do think it's a talent, if I'm honest with you. Because I have been writing songs for as long as I can remember. Mm-hmm. So I know that I've got a natural knack for it.
Yeah.
And then it got like any other natural knack, right? Any other talent, you train it, just like an athlete, you know? Mm-hmm. And so I got really good at it in college. I mean, in my opinion, maybe my songs stink and everybody else, I'm the only one who thinks they're good. But I really think that I got good at it in college, and I see the providence in being brought to Christian music post training. I mean, like the coolest story I have about writing Christian music is in one of the original meetings with the Sacred Heart Guild. I was asked to lead like the core team meeting, and we would do praise and worship music at this core team meeting because that's what we were there to do. And there was a priest, actually he might have been a deacon at the time, Deacon Ferry, now Father Ferry, in our diocese, and he was going to give the reflection. And I was standing outside of the school we worked at during an off period, and was just like, I think I'm supposed to write a song about Mary. And so I jotted down these lyrics in like maybe 5 minutes, and then went home and like spent 30 minutes, put it to a melody, and played that song at the core team meeting. And Father Ferry, got up to speak and then told this story about like how Mary played this huge role in his call to his vocation, and how like that was what he had been planning to speak about that whole time.
Wow.
And like we hadn't communicated, So it was this moment of providence where I kind of was like, oh, maybe this is like there's the charism of music,
Yeah.
So maybe there's a charism there.
Well, may I share what was prophetically said of your wife?
Yes, sure.
She was prayed over by one of the CFRs, right?
Brother
Damien?
Damien, yeah.
Brother Damien, who said that she has a voice that will bring others to confession.
Yes. Have I ever told you what happened after that or no?
Go ahead and share with our listeners.
Yeah, so that happened like a 7-day period before where this story is going. So a week before. And so Brother Damien prophesies over her. He prophesied over me and was like, you're going to be a foundation to lead people to take risks in music. And I was like, I have no idea what that means. You were so explicit with her.
Yeah.
But 1 week later, we ended up at St. Mary's in Ridgefield. And it was funny because we had kind of forgotten that Brother Damien had done this. And we had signed up to do St. Mary's months beforehand. And so we were there, and I remember we were like considering not going. She was very pregnant at the time. And so we were like, you know what? The Lord's always been generous with us. Let's do it. We'll be generous. And Father Malachi, CFR, was supposed to play with us, and he forgot his guitar. And so he was like, the Lord told me I'm supposed to be in the confessional tonight. And we were like, how about that? Sounds good, And it was also during, I don't know if it was the Exodus 40 or whatever, but it was during Lent. So I was spending some extra time in adoration. And in adoration, I thought the Lord had said to me, I want you to tell them that it is good enough to just be in front of me, and that they have a good father, which happens to be a Christian song.
Yeah. Good father,
And so we played that song for sure. But Father Malachi, I told Father Malachi that, and his response was like, I am confirming that for you, dude. Because that's how he talks. And he's super charismatic. And we were praying, and it was like palpable. I mean, my hands were in the air. Which is not usually my style, while we were praying with Father Malachi, because it was like this rush of the Holy Spirit. It was like I could feel it, And then when we got to playing, I'm pretty sure we played for like maybe an hour, or so, and both sides of the church were lined for the confessional. And then we found out that Father Malachi stayed in the confessional till about 11 o'clock.
Wow.
And so the night had started around like 7:38, something like that, But then even later on, we did another heart-to-heart, I think actually it wasn't at St. Jude's, although we did one at St. Jude's.
Yeah.
And Brother Damien was there, and Father Malachi was there. And it was the first time we had all been together since this happened. And so we were like, Brother Damien, your prophecy came true. And he was like, I prophesied over you? And I was like, yeah, you're not allowed to just forget that.
Well, he prophesies over so many people.
Well, actually, he actually said, that the words aren't for him, and so he really does just forget them. But push come to shove, we were able to actually connect. And obviously, like, I don't know details like this person's name, that Father Malachi, that week that we were together with Father Malachi, 1 week later after Brother Damien had prophesied over Renee, Brother Damien was doing a mission somewhere else, and it was a healing ministry, and there was a young woman who he had been working with for that weekend. And she experienced tremendous healing. And by the end of that time together, she had said to Brother Damien, you know, like, I just want my father to come back to the church. That's like what I really want. And at the end of that time together, she comes up to Brother Damien and is like, brother, you're never going to believe this. I just got a text from my friend that my dad went to this praise and worship night in this place called Ridgefield, Connecticut, and went to confession for the first time in 10 years.
Wow.
And we were like, no way. And the line that's always stuck with me from that story is that Brother Damien responded to this, you know, providence, because I don't know what else to call it, with, you know, if you ever forget that God's writing the story, you know, you're out of your mind. Like, he writes straight with crooked lines. I know that is a huge rabbit hole that we just went down.
Such a cool story.
And
I
think it connects a lot with creativity, right? Because I guess the question is, you know, is creativity, whatever it is, whether it's writing songs, writing poetry, baking, photography, art, you know, is it for you or is it for others?
Certainly when you're baking, it's for others, hopefully. I mean, a little bit.
Only for yourself.
Tiny bit. You got to taste test it.
That's right.
So you don't poison other people.
Right,
but
yeah. No, I eat all the cookies. But I think
I don't know,
I think it's both, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it feeds the soul. And if it's not feeding your own soul, then you're doing something that doesn't feed your soul. So, like,
yeah,
it's
a charism. You get joy out of, you know, that, but obviously there's a benefit for other people.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's for both, because I think that idea of the charism, right? And a lot of charisms, some charisms seem a little more mundane, but I think a lot of them have a very profoundly creative element, like people that are great at preaching the word of God, you know, great
Amen.
speakers. Well, that's very creative, you know, to come up with a homily in our service. And I don't know, but
yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
or whatever it is. You know, I know my parents have this friend named, I only know his last name, Mr. Roten. I know him as that. I don't know.
Fair enough.
Yeah, but he has a true, unbelievable gift of woodworking. He has built like the most intricate altar by himself, like this inlaid wood's absolutely gorgeous.
Amen.
And it leads others into worship. And I think he gets great fulfillment out of it because he just does it, and that's where he finds his peace. And
yeah.
So yeah, I think creativity has, but I think that's a big distinction between that and creating something solely for the purpose of others' consumption, like what you're talking about with these songs. Yeah.
I mean, are you talking about the Christian songs or like commercial songs?
Both, because I'll be blunt. This is my thought on Christian music: is
tell me.
that 99% of Christian music is also creatively vapid. In that it was written so that it could be a radio hit. A lot of the stuff with the mainstream Christian artists. That's why, like, these obscure Christian artists no one have heard of, like Josh Garrels. And,
I actually haven't heard of him. So
there you go. Yeah, I've never heard of him. But I think you know Josh Garrels?
Yeah, I do.
And he's creative. He hasn't sold out, right? He does it from the heart. You could tell the difference between a song from the heart and a song that's written to make money or fill an album or this or that, you know. And
yeah, I mean it's funny because you could call it a war on creativity, right? Like the idea of selling out.
Yeah.
Is kind of like it's an offense against real creativity.
Yes.
Which, I mean, if I were being bold, which why not, right? It's an offense against God in that way, you know, like God gave us this creative faculty, you know, and so we are called to use it. We're called to use it well. And I'm not talking like people write bad songs, including me. I would say 99% of what I write is terrible, you know.
Disagree.
That's how.
Disagree.
Well, no, I think that's how it works, you know, like. Okay, maybe if you're writing 100 songs, 90 are awful, you know, 8 are okay, one's good, one's great, you know?
Yeah, sure.
But like a lot, like if I were to take it from CCM to pop music, you know, like I don't know if you can justify saying something like trap rap that's filled with curse words and is like the theme of the song is fornication. You know what I mean? Like how creative is that? You know, if our creativity is a reflection of God making things and then making them good. Yeah. You know, how do I understand that in your opinion?
Well, that brings up a great question: is like what is the role of morally objectionable things in art?
Right.
You know, I mean, I love, for example, listening to Simon and Garfunkel.
Sure.
Which are great, but I mean, some of their one of their songs is about holding up a liquor store.
Right.
And they do make references sometimes to suicide or to fornication, but they do it in such a way that I think they show the unhappiness of those who pursue that path.
Right. Totally.
Which is interesting because I mean, I don't know, like in a Hallmark Channel, for example, nobody would ever look at the Hallmark Channel and say that's good art.
No.
Because it's not.
No,
right? It's not creative at all.
No.
Totally clean.
Cookie cutter,
absolutely nothing inspired versus, perhaps something like, I don't know, Braveheart, which is bloody.
Yeah.
It's all get out, but also has a profound message and is something that's tremendously artistically well done.
I mean, and if you wanted to like make it a religious thing, you could look at a movie like Silence, right? With Scorsese, which is filled with apostasy. You know what I mean? Like terrible, terrible sin, different kind of sin, but filled with apostasy. So I think here, here's what I would say. I think there's value in the creative arts when they promote the good, the true, and the beautiful. I think that sometimes you can do that through the negative, and other times you can't do that through the negative. So like a very clear example to me is like nudity doesn't have a place in movies because whoever is nude on film is a real person outside of the camera. Like that's actually someone's son or daughter.
Yeah. That's fair. But if nudity is acceptable in the Sistine Chapel or in Michelangelo's David, and they were based on real models.
But based on, right? As opposed to like
an actual portrayal.
Yeah, I mean it's not a person. Like the David is, a magnificent piece of art, but like it ain't David.
Yeah, because I don't think that poor guy walks around naked all that often.
I mean, I sure hope he didn't.
Put on a little skirt or something. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on morally objectionable things in art?
Certainly for music, like as I got deeper into my faith, I used to listen to a lot of country music, but it's a lot about these relationships and just things that are kind of antithetical to Catholic faith and the way that we would go about life, the way that we would go about sort of looking at people, so I do think that we have to be careful in terms of what we listen to and consume, whether it's...
Yeah. And I think you have to know yourself.
Sure.
Because some people are more impacted than others, I will say.
Certainly. Certainly.
I really, Aquinas says that, and Benedict Rochelle says, going off of Aquinas, that people are drawn to God in truth, beauty, or goodness.
Right.
And so for me, for example, I could read a book of, from another, Protestant or religious author and be like, it's stupid, I'm not going to buy the arguments in there. While somebody that was more attracted to truth might be swayed. But for me, it's more like if I watch a movie that contains some disturbing scenes, it'll be difficult to pray.
Really?
Because beauty is the way in which I encounter God. So beauty is the way in which the devil also tries to invade me personally and try to draw me away from God. Not truth or goodness.
Yeah, who cares about the truth? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Well, in the sense that that's not. Yeah.
No, I know what you mean. I didn't realize that I didn't realize that positive and negative to the transcendentals. Like I never thought of, well, if you are called, like for me, it is truth. Like truth is a big. I mean, for goodness sakes, I work at a company named Veritas. But like
1350 AM, Veritas got a number.
Right, exactly. Right, but like my reversion came in a huge way about because of apologetics. And so you're making sense of something for me in like live time, which is that as I was growing in faith, arguments against the faith were something I were really concerned about.
Yeah.
And would impact the way I prayed.
And that would just wash over me. I'd be like, oh, whatever,
Right. Yeah. Wow.
Or people that are drawn to God through goodness, I think would be very scandalized by the scandals in the church or by, bad example of Christians. Well, when I see scandals in the church, like, oh, that's unfortunate. I'll just, pray for them.
Right. Right.
It's not,
right.
It's not in any way a faith shaker for me.
Right. A faith shaker. Man, we're making categories. We are so creative.
We are creative. So is it necessary, do you think, for young adults to indulge in some sort of creativity? Because it seems like, when you're a kid, you take art classes, music classes, things like that. Do you think it's necessary for young adults to have some sort of creative outlet in their life?
I mean, I think it's a good de-stressor, right? If you're like me and you're an accountant and you're constantly looking at numbers and using your reason and all that, it's a good break. And I mean, I certainly, even just for, I mean, I can't paint or anything, but when I go into a beautiful church, that certainly lifts my mind and my heart to God. So there's that appreciation there. Even just like growing in faith and kind of being exposed to chant, the Gregorian chant, and more traditional hymns and things like that. I mean, I certainly think that it helps to lift your mind to what's important. And leisure, is certainly has a place in all of our lives. It can't all be about, production and,
I think too. This is me thinking out loud.
It's the best way
so
to do it.
I'm not prepared to. Yeah, because if I think in my head, you can't hear me. But
or can I?
Our listeners cannot, I hope. But in order to be like God, since we are made in His image and likeness, God is ultimately a creator, and we need to be able to look at something and be able to say that is something I made. And I wonder, when you, for example, look at your son, if you feel that sense of accomplishment in the sense of like, I've done something God has done in bringing something new into existence. And maybe people get that by if their job is to build a house or something like that.
Right.
But ultimately, if hopefully when you look at baking, you
baking,
look at his brownies like, I did that. And
right.
that's a sense of like, I have accomplished something that a task that God has given me to do, and I have something to show for it.
Right.
But I don't even think it needs to be artsy necessarily, because I'm thinking I teach RCIA, and so I construct and craft my lesson plans and deliver them in a way that, is compelling to the people in my class.
And there's creativity involved in that.
There is creativity. And,
you don't just read the catechism to them, you just do it dynamically.
Exactly. And this is like a lot of times the first time that they're being exposed in a while to the truths of the faith. And so to make a compelling, joyful argument is, I think, a creative outlet too, like crafting sort of your own story of how God has worked in your life, but at the same time teaching the truth of the faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so to answer the question about my son, right? I mean, I don't know if I ever look at him and go, I created you,
You should remind him of that frequently. You know what Bill Cosby used to say?
No, I don't.
I brought you into this world, I could take you out of it.
Yeah. I didn't know that was him. I've heard
Bill Cosby,
that so many times, though.
From your parents?
No, what is the Fifth Amendment? I think that love is creative, basically. And I mean that in the sense of like between friends, between spouses, between siblings, if you don't put the effort in, love ceases.
Yeah.
And so love as such requires creativity. Mm-hmm. I mean, but if you think about it, everything requires creativity because like we are, developing sentences as we go. You know what I mean?
Yes, but I think in a lot of lines of work,
yeah,
particularly no offense to accountants,
I love that. But I'm sorry. It's so
no knock on accountants. I mean, it's awesome. But you work by your generally GAP, generally accepted principles. Is that
GAP? Oh, yeah, yes, GAP. Generally accepted.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're close.
Generally accepted principles.
Like, are
right?
you talking about CPA? What?
No. And like if you're creative and just like I think I'm going to do it my own way,
sure,
you're going to be in huge trouble. And
sure.
in a lot of lines of work, especially nowadays, there is a lack of creativity because it's like apply the principle, do the principle, get the results.
Sure.
That's your job.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people are drained by that because they're like, well, first of all, I'm only working for the man. I don't have anything to show for it for myself.
Yeah. But
also then I have no creativity because I'm not in charge of making any decisions in this whole process. It's just do what I'm told to do.
Right. The standard governs what you need to do as an auditor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, so I think it's important then to have those creative outlets outside of work, like especially when you're constricted and you can't. I mean, obviously you have much more capacity.
Right. I've got like creativity's built into my job.
Yeah.
Because like I would even go as far as to say that podcasting is a creative thing to do.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
We are trying to have informative, entertaining, if I'm on the episode comedic, communication, so it's not just sharing, to an extent, it's also showing, because it's not just among us three.
Right.
Although you can make the argument we're sharing with other people, but whatever.
I mean, even if nobody listens to Restless, which I hope everyone does, but even if no one does,
everybody,
it's still worth creating in that we've had great discussions,
absolutely.
We've bonded, we've shared our faith with one another.
Yeah. I mean, but I wanted to jump off of leisure because I haven't read this book. I actually imagine you may have, but
Joseph Pieper?
Right? Leisure is the basis of culture.
Yeah, I have not read the whole thing.
Well, fair enough. No. But
like you, I buy books and put them on my shelf.
That's what's up. But leisure is right, like the things that you do for their own sake, and like to an extent, you can think of prayer and worship in that way, in the sense that like you do prayer and worship for prayer and worship. It's like the right thing to do.
Don't need any further end.
Right. It's right there. And so in a sense, like leisure and creativity, and like I really think that creativity can go to, yes, baking, yes, music, yes, painting, sports, you know what I mean? Like the amount of times you hear a commentator go like, "Oh, what a beautiful play."
It was beautiful, yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And so there's like real creativity to
strategy,
sports.
Right?
Right. Absolutely.
Even at work, developing, like you can get strategic about how you go about testing
Absolutely.
things.
Okay.
And so insofar as that's true, like that's a participation, or like maybe it's a shadow. It's not a participation, I don't think, but it's a shadow of like that thing that is supposed to be at the center.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like a nice little reminder, that like you were really made for this.
Yeah.
That worship, that prayer.
What's always amazed me that when Jesus ascended into heaven, he said, go preach the gospel to all nations, baptizing them, teaching them, and then left. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, Jesus, can you give us a little more specifics? Right. Like that was very vague.
Take a couple details.
Go
if you
preach the gospel. What the heck does that mean? But I think God specifically made it so vague because he wanted us to use our creativity, even in cooperating with him and spreading the gospel and building the church. Because we, of course, in America, have a parish model and this and that, but that wasn't always the model of how the church functioned and operated. I mean, a lot of the stuff we take for granted is like, this is how the church has to run, was not the case in the past and may not be the case in the future.
Right.
Obviously the 7 sacraments, okay, that comes from Christ. And those are unchanging, and the moral teachings are unchanging, but how they're preached, what we do, what a parish looks like, what a Christian community looks like.
I mean, the Lord's, or is it Paul? Paul says, "I become all things to all people."
Yeah.
All, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If Paul ain't creative, nobody's creative.
Right. And it's funny, I was just teaching my scripture class today about Paul's speech in the Areopagus in Acts 17, I think, pretty sure. 17, he gets up there and he uses some really interesting ways to evangelize. First of all, he quotes from some of their poets, seeing in their creativity inklings of the ultimate creator.
Right.
He points to nature and he points to the fact that they're very religious and have a shrine to an unknown God.
Right.
And he kind of, so he points to all of these elements of creativity that the Greeks had as inklings and preparations for the gospel. So really any art should be and can be a preparation for the gospel, because any communication of the deep human spirit is a longing for God and a longing for heaven.
Right.
So even the most secular of, a song about fornication,
right,
you can look at that and say, well, what are you really longing for? What are you seeking
here?
You're seeking fulfillment. You're seeking happiness. You're not just seeking pleasure. You're seeking a meaning and purpose in your life. And so
I to jump off that briefly, I think it's worth my clarifying that my position on listening to like certain pieces of music, or even looking at like certain pieces of art, when I mentioned nudity in real life versus nudity in the statue, like that's an important distinction because it's a real person. But like you said, there is that inkling there. But I do think only certain people have that capacity.
Correct.
Just like you
agree.
said.
It's a very thin line between that and falling into sin.
Right. You know, like you have to have the armor of God on.
Yeah.
If you're gonna be capable of that kind of distinction. Like you,
Well, I'm reminded of that great story about these 2 bishops who were walking in Rome, and they happened to walk past a very scantily clad prostitute. And one bishop turned his eyes quickly to the ground and didn't look, and the other bishop looked directly at the woman. And as they walked past, the other bishop said, "Bishop, did you not see that woman and how she was dressed?" And the other bishop said, "No, I only saw a soul."
Right.
So he had so mastered himself that it was not a temptation. However, it's very rare, I think, to get to that point where art, morally objectionable stuff will not be a temptation in art.
And you could even say that other bishop who looked away, if it really was a temptation for that bishop, he did the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely did the right thing. Yeah. No, I do not advocate for anybody going and looking at porn and being like, let's see where the deep desires of the human heart are. No, don't do that.
Yeah, and even just have a level of humility to know that, even if you don't think that you're tempted, the more that you immerse yourself in that sort of, like listening to that kind of music.
Yeah.
I mean, we're human.
And we can easily get desensitized. We should be shocked by sin.
Oh my gosh.
And it's easy to get desensitized and be like, oh, it's just normal.
Thing.
No, it's not normal.
Yeah.
Not normal to sin.
I think a synonym for desensitization is the word YouTube. I
only watch cat videos. I don't know what you're talking about.
And Restless.
Which is now on YouTube. Check us out.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe. Anyway, speaking of YouTube, we have reached the end of our episode on creativity. Hopefully it's been enlightening for y'all. But I do want to encourage our listeners to be creative in this element. So we're looking for more topics. What would you like to hear about? What would you like to hear us discuss? Why don't you put it in the comments? You can put it in comments on YouTube. I don't know. Does Spotify have comments section?
Spotify has a Q&A now. Actually.
Spotify does have a Q&A. So, so if you're listening on Spotify, if you find us on Podbean, there's lots of different ways in which you can connect with us. And please do put your feedback about Restless, how we can, work better by like putting a bag over my head. Making
Matt shave.
Making Matt shave.
Yeah, things like that.
Please, we've been asking that for years.
Yeah.
But please, give us your feedback because we want to be creative and truly glorify God in everything that we do. And we encourage all of our listeners to do the same. Be creative, find where your charism is, give to others in the image of Christ, who is the great creator of all of us. You can find us on Veritas Catholic Network, 1350 AM, 103.9 FM, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Play.
Apple Podcasts.
Apple Podcasts. Yeah, I don't know. Google Play. That's it. Google Play. And wherever else you get your podcast. So tune in next time to Restless.